Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder as I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It is a lovely day here in suburban Chicago, and I am happy to be bringing you another episode of Pick Up and Deliver. Well, I'm still catching up on telling you about games I played in the last few weeks during my sojourn away from the podcast. And so here I am with three more games that I first tried at Origins 2022. The first of these is from Pandasaurus Games. It's called Trek 12. They have a couple different Trek 12 games. This one is Trek 12 Himalaya. I believe that each one plays pretty similarly but has a slightly different map. Trek 12 is an interesting game. In it, it's a pretty simple roll and write in which you are rolling dice and you are putting the value of, honestly, it's been a couple weeks, so having a little trouble here remembering all the details, but you're rolling dice and you're putting the value of one of them into this grid of spaces that you have drawn on your mountain. The first one that you can put in wherever you like, but then after that, wherever you're putting them in, you have to be connected to the ones that you've done previously. And the whole idea of connecting them is that you want to get chains of numbers that all have values next to each other. You want to have them increment from one to the next. And what you get is you get points for each time that you make that leap. And one of the things that's interesting about it is that you have to choose whether to link them when you play them or not. And here's the deal. You can get points for runs, or you can get points for sets. Like if you have a bunch of numbers of the same value next to each other, then you can get points for that. Or if you have a bunch of numbers in sequence, you can get points for that. But you have to decide which of those two the number is going to be a part of when you write it. So when you write a number next to another number, you have to decide, do I connect it or not? If I connect it, I've committed to it being part of this chain or whatever. If I don't connect it, I've committed to it not being part of the chain. So there's an interesting decision to be made there. I was taught the game and I played it in about 15 minutes. It's a pretty simple game. I think you play three different ones in a single sitting, so it's a little bit longer than the one I played. But generally it is a light flip and write game with some interesting choices to be made. I imagine once you've played a few times, you get some of the strategies down. But ultimately, I didn't think it was nearly as interesting as something like Quicks, which has one kind of decision that you have to make, but you have to make it a whole bunch of times during the game. Trek 12 ended really quickly, and I thought that was less engaging for me. A fine game, if somebody had it at the game club and said, hey, you want to play? And I wasn't doing anything else, I would certainly play it. But I'm not sure I would recommend that you run out and get it. Definitely give it a try. You should be able to find, I have not looked, but you should be able to find some people online who have like play along videos of the game, because it's pretty simple. And if you have a map, you can play along with anybody. I mean, that is one of the nice things about this game. It is a one-to-many type of roll and write experience. So that's Trek 12 Himalaya. From Pandasaurus Games, I did not catch the name of the designer. You know what? Part of me wonders, is it Phil Walker Harding? Seems like it maybe could be, because he is certainly somebody who can, when he feels like it, design a game of this weight. And I don't know. I mean, he's been designing some flip and writes lately. He had the Silver and Gold, and he had Super Mega Lucky Box. These are two relatively accessible ones that he designed. So maybe it would be. So Trek 12 Himalaya was designed by Bruno Cathala and Corentin Lebrat, with art from Jonathan Aucomte and Olivier Detoretu. And that's again from Pandasaurus Games. Next up is a game I tried on the last day of the con. They happened to have a demo out and I sat down to try it. This is Akropolis. Akropolis is a tile laying game where you have the tiles are all these sort of pieces of, they're sort of triangles, and each one has a sort of circle on it. So when you're playing, you either play next to the other triangles or you play on top of the ones that are there. Of course, when you play on top, you're raising up a level and you're covering up whatever you play on top of it. And so you have this interesting back and forth where you are trying to figure out, do you want to keep spreading out and just get 1 point for each thing you add, or do you want to go up and each level you go up adds another point to the things you put on. So, one tile with a blue thing on level 1 is worth 1, whereas if it's on level 2, it counts as 2 blue things. The way that you score points, each tile, like I said, has 3 different areas on it, and those areas will either be colorful circles, which they're drawn to be like plazas or something, but they're colorful plazas that then help you score one of the different color combinations, or some of them are these courtyards with stars in the middle. So this is the other part that's pretty interesting. So each color combination scores in a different way. I remember, for instance, blue, you score the largest contiguous group of blue spaces that you have. So if you have a bunch of different blue spaces spread out through the board, you'll get nothing. If you have a large single contiguous blue space, then you get a bunch of points. But here's where it gets interesting. For each courtyard you have, you're going to get a point. Unless it's on level 2, you get 2 points. If it's on level 3, you get 3 points. And that gets you your base score for blue. And then you're going to look for the blue courtyards, which will have stars in them, either 1 star, or I think there might be some with 2 stars. And you count up all of your blue stars, and your score is that base score I said times the number of stars you have. Well, as you know, of course, because you took 3rd grade math, 4th grade math, I don't remember when we started doing multiplication. If you multiply something by 0, your answer is 0, which means that if you didn't get any stars in courtyards, it doesn't matter how good your array of scoring for that particular color is, you get 0 points. And that's true for all 5 different colors in the game. So, like I said, each color scores slightly differently. There are some that score, each separate group scores a point. There are some that score based on a large contiguous group. There are others that have different scoring mechanisms. Honestly, I don't remember all of them. But it was relatively easy to pick up, certainly in terms of how the scoring worked. It was a 5-minute teach, pretty simple. But the really clever bits, the things that you could tell over time you would get better at playing, are how high do you stack the pieces and how many different colors do you try to score, right? Because I didn't really explain how the tile drafting works. There's this river of tiles, and on your turn you can take you can take the front tile for free, or if you're going to take one of the later tiles, you have to pay these water drops, I think they were. And you start with a certain number of water drops, and every time you take a certain color, you get more water drops. And so there's an element of balancing. One of the things I like about this one is you don't put the water drops on the tile you've skipped. So you're not paying someone else these water drops. You're just, if you take the tile that's past the first one, you have to pay water drops. And those are paid to the bank. So that is a nice little twist on what is the usual method, which is if you want to take the one that's not in front, you have to put money onto it, and then that provides an incentive for someone else to take it. This game, I guess, with the different scoring conditions, they decided they don't really need an incentive for everybody to take the tiles. Somebody will want the tile, so they just make you pay to skip it. It's clever. In the end, the scoring, you're adding up, you're writing it on a tally sheet. All in all, it's a really interesting little puzzle game. If I did not have any puzzle games, it certainly would be one I would think about getting. As it is, I didn't think it was substantially better than lots of other puzzle games that I have. And so it would be a matter of did I like this more than other ones? And for me, no. Here, the couple of the main things that did not push this into the must-buy category for me. Like I said, it feels a lot like other sort of puzzly games. The one that comes to mind most closely, if I felt like playing a game like this, it would either be Between Two Cities, which to me has the interesting element of having to negotiate with your neighbors, as well as the variable scoring conditions, which feel very similar to the ones in Akropolis. Or if I just want sort of a puzzly tile layer, I would maybe get something, either Carcassonne is lighter or Voluspa is heavier. Either of those, I think, are more satisfying than Akropolis. I will say, going for it, the tiles are nice and thick. The game feels very nice to play, and at the end you have this great spread of tiles with interesting vertical elements to it. The teach is pretty easy, and so this is certainly a game worth trying if you get a chance. I'm not going to add it to my collection, but I'm not sure that I wouldn't, like if I found it in like a $5 bin somewhere, I'm not sure I wouldn't get it, but certainly at full price, it's not for me. So that's Akropolis, designed by Jules Massaud and published by Gigamic Games. And then finally, the last game I got to try at Origins is called Oltréé. Now, Oltréé has been around for a while. I remember seeing it at Gen Con last year. It's very pretty. He had a huge display of it. So Oltréé is a fantasy-themed tower defense game where you are a group of adventurers and you're in this village that has a magical tree, I guess, and you are trying to protect the village from a variety of people who are coming into the village, who are marauding and trying to take advantage of the village. On your turn, you can move your piece around. If you're on one of the outer edges of the village, you can use the special power that is enacted by the villager in that area. And so there's a lot of moving around to gather resources and use the special powers to amplify your defense of the village. Then there are these invaders who show up in these different spots. And when they're there, then they stop the villager from helping you. And you have to defeat them in order to get rid of them. You usually defeat them through some combination of spending tokens and I think rolling dice. Yes, there were some dice involved. Like I said, it's a tower defense game with a story element added to it. The game is beautiful. It's Vincent Dutrait art, which really shows lovely character design, beautiful backgrounds, and just a very nice, fantastical setting of sort of generic fantasy world. Now, it may not surprise you to learn the designer of this game is Antoine Bauza. Now, I've played games like this by Antoine Bauza before, or one in particular, and that's Ghost Stories. So now, Ghost Stories and Bastion, which is a rework of Ghost Stories, are games where you have a tower defense and you have a village in the middle and the villagers give you special powers and you have a limited number of actions, and if you don't use the special power as well, or you don't defend the villagers so that they're blocked up, then you get overwhelmed by the incoming monsters. It's the same formula for Oltréé. Now, I'll admit we only played the one time, so I did not get a sense of how much easier or harder it is than Ghost Stories. At first blush, it seems like it's easier. We did lose, but from the play, I could kind of see a bit more about how the game worked, and I could see some paths toward interesting storytelling. And I think the game is much more thematic than Ghost Stories, although Ghost Stories I think is fantastic theme. The art is really evocative in that game, and I really like the way that the tower defense plays out in Ghost Stories. But the story, like if the cards had all their art removed and they just became enemy and the tiles in the village just became special power, I don't know that Ghost Stories wouldn't still be pretty fun. It would. So the things that you're doing don't really feel connected to me thematically to the mechanisms in the game of Ghost Stories. I can't say that Oltréé feels a lot better that way, but it does feel like they've given more attention to story and storytelling as part of the game, that you are reading some cards about things that are happening and there's these events that come up that give the story a bit more flair. In that regard, it's pretty fun. I think if I had never played Ghost Stories and didn't have it, Oltréé would be an interesting approach to that same kind of game, and probably better given that it is newer. Given that I do have and really enjoy Ghost Stories, I'm not sure that I would recommend Oltréé over Ghost Stories if you have the opportunity to play both. But if you've never played a game like this and someone brings Oltréé to the table and wants to give it a try, I would certainly recommend. I would also play it again if somebody I knew had it and brought it to the table and wanted to play, because while it does overlap a lot in content and feel with Ghost Stories, that's not bad. I like Ghost Stories a lot, and so having another game from the same master designer who made that game works pretty well for me, and I'm happy to have it. Hello. So that's Oltréé from Antoine Bauza with art by Vincent Dutrait, published by Studio H. Well, that's 3 more games knocked off the list of games that I've tried recently. I hope that you enjoyed my conversation about them. What games have you been playing recently? Head over to Board Game Geek Guild 3269 and share your experiences with me. I'd love to hear what games have hit the table for you and what you've thought of them. If you want to reach out to me directly, you can send me a geek mail message on Board Game Geek. My username is Wombat929. You could also send me an email to Brendan at Rattlebox Games, or you could send me a direct message on Boitaju, Board Game Arena, or yukata.de. Thanks for joining me on walk today. I hope your next walk is as pleasant as mine was. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.